Hello and welcome to PeachFuzz, Lakepoint Sports and Prep Baseball Georgia's high school baseball podcast. I'm Grayson Rosen, joined by Prep Baseball Georgia Scouting Director Hudson Graham and Prep Baseball Georgia Assistant Scouting Director Ian Smith. We've had a lot of high school baseball going on. The Georgia State playoffs nearing their conclusion. The Final Four this weekend. All of our Sweet 16 games played last week. All the Elite Eight played earlier this week. And the championships just a week away, just over a week away. How are you guys feeling? We're kind of coming to the end.
Yeah, we're getting there, man. It's been a grind. It's been a lot of traveling, a lot of different games. The last few weeks, it feels like it's kind of been a whirlwind. Just trying to figure out what games we've been to because it seems to be happening so fast and furious. It's been a lot of good baseball, some good upsets. A lot of teams we expected to do well so far in the playoffs have, and some teams that are making some spicy runs here towards the end. So it's been fun. All around, it's been a good time. It's my first Georgia playoff, so yeah, it's been definitely been fun to get into it.
All right, Hudson, what about you?
Yeah, it's been great. At this point, there's still a battle of what games we need to get to, right? So other than the championship, there's always going to be a decision of what we got to make. So it's tough. It gets easier and easier. Ian and one of our other guys went south last week, which we'll touch on. But it's been great so far. Looking forward to getting these Final Fours rolling.
Awesome. Well, we've also got Ian's all underclass team, pretty much an all sophomore class team. But we'll kind of get to that after we talk about state playoffs. And we'll go ahead and start. We have the round of 16 and the Elite Eight to talk about. Hudson, we'll start with the kind of your list you sent me. You got Kings Ridge versus Social Circle to start it off.
Yeah, so I went over for that game 3. We had some guys over there earlier for their doubleheader, but went over there for their game 3. Social Circle, a little bit down from last year. They had a really strong season last year, but Kings Ridge was kind of out for some revenge. Last year they kind of got busted out a little early. So they were looking to bounce back from that. Really young lineup for them, led by a couple older guys and Luke Hill and Nate Kitteridge. So those are two guys kind of leading the way as seniors for them. They want to finish on top this year. So they went down and took care of business against Irwin County. And now they face Tula Falls, which is another really quality team. I'm sure we'll touch on that matchup here shortly. But yeah, Kings Ridge, they got some guys. Chip Gorski's been doing well for them. I think he's got 6 bombs on the year, bat a little over 400 for them. So they kind of took care of business that game 3, kind of just started with the bats and just really didn't stop. Got out of there in 4 or 5 innings, I think. So they're 1 through 9, pretty solid. I think they match up well pitching wise with Tula, but I think that game's going to come down to who hits. And a lot of those smaller classifications, the bats really carry those teams. So that was the first matchup of catching that game 3. Like I said, Kings Ridge took care of business, and then they actually, won the Elite Eight. Now they're in the Final Four up on Friday.
Gotcha. And then Blessed Trinity versus North Forsyth. What happened there?
Yeah, so that was one that, I really like North Forsyth coming into the year. I think they got a lot of pieces coming back next year, so they're going to be one to watch. But this BT team, they just know how to win. And really their top 4 guys in their lineup have really carried them. That being Wesley Bass, Georgia Tech commit, the Zagrin twins, and Caden Dawson in the 4-hole freshman. So that they just really set the tone for the entire offense. Sean Green had a big solo shot to get things started in that game. And then I'd have to go back. I believe it was Carson that had another home run shortly after him. Aiden. It seems like whenever we talk about one of them, the other one always performs, and then they just swap back.
It's crazy. So, it's who gets the barrel in each night. You never know with these two. Man.
Yeah. Yeah. So they've been great. Probably both going to be future gamers for us on that 17U team. But yeah, they really just took care of it. Cameron Novak had the best outing that I've seen out of him in that game 1 start. Really set the tone. Went up against Braden Bold, which is a really big riser in the 25 class. And so he was good. Best I've seen velo wise. He was up to 87, 88. But they just kind of ran into a couple fastballs for those home runs that kind of got them up over the top.
Gotcha. And we'll talk about it kind of briefly, but Brookwood versus Hillgrove. What do you have for that game?
Yeah, Brookwood. We had a guy over at that game. Good matchup. Hillgrove, has the juniors that we like that we've talked about before. But we'll talk about it here shortly in the game that I was at last night. But Maddox Rosinski had a big home run in that game, but they said went all of 400 feet. So yeah, Brookwood took care of business there, and then obviously gets to the big matchup up against Buford.
Yeah, do you want to go ahead and just talk about Brookwood versus Buford?
Yeah, no, really electric environment last night. They split Jackson Barbie and Charlie Foster. They really threw everybody at them in those first two games in the doubleheader. And then they had Joseph Soto going last night for them. And I actually saw Soto the first game of the season, and he's even better than he was then. He was out of the pen behind Barberry when I saw him. But last night he was, 81, 84, touching 85. But the most impressive things about him is that Buford started kind of got a little momentum, ground ball to the second baseman. Runner runs into the second baseman, ball comes out, kind of easy play there. And that ends up, being a big first and second, no outs, I believe. And then they get a sac bunt from Aiden Lockett, and then Ethan Murray with a ground ball up the middle with the infield back to get to 4-3. But then Soto came right back out and shut him down in the next inning, which kind of killed the momentum there. And then Buford actually had a chance after Soto came out with 6 innings. Christian Mendez came in, guy I've never seen before. Junior looked really strong, up to 86, 87. Got 2 quick outs. I believe he gave up a walk, and then Aiden Lockett came through with a base hit to bring them within 1. And then they actually brought in Maddox Rosinski from shortstop to finish that game, which was really impressive from the freshman coming right off a shortstop and getting it done. Him and his brother Boomer kind of supplied the offense. Alex Reyes, who we've talked about a lot, he was 3 for 3 with a really big hit for the first 2 runs of the game. So a really, really fun game last night for me. That was kind of one of the most bigger ones that I've been to. Atmosphere-wise, I've kind of chased some smaller schools. So that was really fun to be at. Looking forward to see Brookwood versus Grayson in that Final Four matchup.
Gotcha. And then the final game on your list, Mount Perrin versus Worth County. How'd that one go?
Yeah, Mount Perrin, they hit their way through that one. Got a really good start from Michael Fredette, who we've been really high on, Georgia Tech commit, up to 92. I think he might have bumped to 93 later in the game. But his breaking balls is really what, keeps his fastball so in tune, keeping hitters off balance with it. And, Mount Perrin's offense really, really woke up. Future gamer Henry Agapo had a solo shot backside early in the game. Carson Hodges had some hits. A couple other guys I hadn't seen before in Chase Landmaster, I believe. He was really good. And then they had Rhett Bonner, a sophomore, name that I hadn't seen before, that had a really good game. So their offense really just took care of business there. Owen Hancock, kind of highly touted, 24 arm in the class, came in for a couple innings, was up to 94. But at that point, Mount Perrin already had the lead. So he looked good. I think he's been hurt a little bit, so didn't have, his full arsenal back, but was still looked really impressive for a couple innings. So now Mount Perrin will take on Appling County in the Final Four, and then with Rockmart and North Cobb Christian on the other side. So that'll be a fun Final Four to see who gets there. I think that's kind of a coin flip for most of those guys. All 4 of those teams have been playing really good baseball all year. And you can never count out Appling County with Tennessee commit Dathan Griffiths and Colony Walton, who's kind of had a breakout year, and then Nathan Nance as well. So really, really fun 2A Final Four matchups coming soon.
Gotcha. Well, Ian, let's go over to your games, and we'll start with Cherokee North Gwinnett.
Yeah, I was able to get out there for the doubleheader a few nights ago, and it was a good matchup. And Cherokee just seemed to be a little bit hurt by the walk in both games. They got in some tough situations, gave up some early runs. Jake Gaskill, uncommitted 2025 outfielder for North Gwinnett, was huge for them in Game 1. Came through with 3 hits and 4 RBIs, including a walk-off backside single in Game 1 to take the game for North Gwinnett. And then in Game 2, another much the same for Cherokee. Some early walks got them in some trouble. Gwinnett scored some runs early, put them up by a few runs, and then it was a little bit off from there. Nathan Schaefer, uncommitted 2025 catcher, was huge for them. He's a guy we've we've kind of fallen in love with this spring. He's had a big spring for them. Been in the middle of the order for North Gwinnett. Bunch of power from the right side. Good catcher behind the plate as well, with good receiving and a strong arm. He's somebody we might see this spring in some showcases, this summer as some showcases as well. And we're looking forward to see what the upside is there in a 2025 catching class that no one has really stood out as the top guy. So I think going into this summer, I think the 2025 catching class in particular is something where we're going to have to identify who's the guy, because there's some names that we've seen. There's some guys in the rankings that are high, but we're not sure who the top guy is right now. So it's going to be a big year for them as well. That was a good matchup for me. Reed Worley, another guy we liked, had a tough outing on the mound. He battled through 5. Again, we mentioned the walks. We showed the swing and miss breaking ball, fastballs up to 92 as well. But just a tough outing for Cherokee, even though they battled all season long. One of the scrappiest teams we've seen, I think, throughout the season. They've just battled. They've got a lot of tough wins without a bunch of big bats. So it was just tough to see them go down there at the end. But North Gwinnett with the moving on the Elite Eight, which we just saw them get bounced last week by the hot North Paulding team, who just knocked off Parkview a few nights ago as well. So that was good to see that.
Gotcha. And then the next game, Locas Grove versus Carterville, definitely a great matchup as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I was out to see that on Saturday. It's a huge Locas Grove playing with a big matchup on their plate with Carterville. Hot as could be. It was good to see Ryan Johnson back on the mound starting. He's been out for about the last month since we seen him go down at Battle for Bartow at Lakepoint about a month ago. He came back early in the series or last series and closed, but this was his first start back, and I think it was the best I've ever seen him pitch. He went 6 innings. He struck out, I believe, 11. Over 20 whiffs created, 47% called strikes and whiffs combined. He threw a bunch of strikes. He showed 5 pitches of fastballs up to 94, which is the highest I've seen from this spring. He was sitting 89 and 92. The cutter looked good. The changeup looked extremely good, and he mixed in 2 breaking balls as well. And I think that was just a really encouraging start for this team as they make their Final Four run to a state championship with a very senior dependent lineup that's looking to make some big wins here at the end. And for Locas Grove, it was an outing for me to go out and see Christian Colon, who started game 2 for them. It was a guy we were really high on. We've seen some video this spring, and we saw him earlier at GDC, but we haven't seen him really as he developed, and he's shown good outings time and time again this spring. And he was impressive for me. He was a really good breaking ball at 71, 74. Showed a nice changeup at 78 to 80 that really broke to both sides of the plate and was getting swing and miss from some of the best bats in the Carterville lineup, which is one of the better lineups in the state. Fastball's up to 87. He's been up to 89 earlier in the spring. And it's a really easy, clean arm that's going to get better and more velocity is going to show as he gets stronger. And I think that's the guy who's going to be high on our list to watch as he develops as just a young sophomore as well.
Gotcha. And then your next game, a Lowndes team that went to 3 games with Harrison, got the win. They take on South Forsyth. How'd that one go?
Yeah, man, this was an exciting one for me. Getting down to Lowndes was like a big thing for me this spring. It was something I really wanted to do. I was able to see a game all the way up at Ridgeland, which is on the border of Tennessee and Georgia. So getting down to South Georgia and seeing a game of Valdosta, and Lowndes was huge for me. They're one of the perennial powerhouses in the state. They continue to crank out quality teams, and this team is no different. 1 through 9 is quality bats throughout. Start to the top with 2024 third baseman heading to Ole Miss, Tate Sermons. It was probably some of the best bat speed I think I've seen this spring. It was electric through the zone. He teed off on a few balls into the gap. Both were caught, unfortunately, but just the power was showing how easy he shows it at the plate. But the big standout for me heading down the Lowndes was Coleman Lewis, 2025 outfielder. Guy I've never seen before, really haven't heard much from before as well, but about as physical as you can get as a junior in this class. 6'1", 220. He's a 3-star linebacker as well for Lowndes. He's a 4.6 runner in the 40, but it was some of the best power and some of the easiest opposite field power that I've seen this spring. He had 5 barrels in game. Drove the ball to all fields. He picked up, I think, 7 RBIs on the doubleheader as they move on to the Final Four. And it was just an impressive performance. He didn't look overmatched in any at bat. He picked up two strike barrels as well, both of the opposite field, off the opposite field wall as well, I should add, on a line. So it was some easy power from Lewis, and somebody that we're excited to see. He's going to possibly be a future gamer for us this summer and wants to be a dual sport player at the next level. So he's looking to find that scholarship that he can play football and baseball at the next level.
Gotcha. And then your final matchup, what would typically be a great football matchup in Georgia, Grayson versus Walton, turned out to be a great matchup in baseball as well. How'd that one go?
Yeah, Grayson's been playing really good on this playoff run. It was a tough matchup going into Game 3 at Walton, which was a fantastic environment last night. Walton packed the house out. They stuck about 150 students behind home plate, which was pretty much a sight to see. It was packed throughout. It was a good game back and forth. A couple costly errors cost Walton early to score a couple early runs for Walton. I mean, a couple early runs for Grayson. And then the Walton bats were flat through the first 5 innings. It was tough to find base hits. There was a couple ground and double plays that really hurt him, and some that could have been big innings. And then they battled out delayed. It was a couple nice barrels from Jackson Taylor and Walker Killamit in the seventh inning or sixth inning, to score 3 runs. They went into the seventh down 3 to 4-3, and the game ended on a line drive barrel from Miller Olson that was caught on a diving play at short from Christian Arroyos, which was one of the more impressive defensive plays in a huge spot. And Grayson playing with house money right now, making a run to the Final Four in 7A is something we didn't have on our bingo card here at the beginning of the spring. But it's really impressive to see this team that's led by a bunch of uncommitted players at the top with Vernon Woodward, who we're going to talk about a little bit later, and Alex Espinoza at third base, and who's also been huge for them on the mound.
Gotcha. Well, that's kind of all the games that you guys went to this week. Obviously, there's a couple other games. I kind of want to start with North Paulding versus Parkview. That one goes 3 games. North Paulding gets the win, and then as well, North Paulding stays hot, and they beat North Gwinnett as well to move to the Final Four.
Yeah, man. I think North Paulding's showing that they might have one of the more balanced rosters in the state. From pitching and bats, it's top to bottom. They have guys that can compete on a nightly basis. They have 3 arms that can start for them, as well as 3 bullpen arms who started as well for them. One of the bullpen arms I saw earlier this spring, Lucas Vargo, a guy who's been huge for them out of the pen, started against Parkview in Game 3, went 5 shutout innings, which is about probably the biggest outing of his high school career. He's a guy who's got a ton of college offers here towards the end of the spring, and is moving well into a summer campaign. And at the plate, Caden Sheffield's been as hot as anybody this playoffs. Yenli Lanasco had 2 big home runs against Parkview as well. Uncommitted 2025, who's big at the plate and on the mound. And again, like I just mentioned, the balance is huge, and they got hot at the right time. And with the win over Parkview, I think they're playing as hot as they can play. And then heading into North Gwinnett and taking that series in 2 games is huge as they move to a massive Final Four matchup with Lowndes coming up this weekend.
Gotcha. And then I'd love to get some thoughts on Etowah's performances thus far, some dominant performances in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. The 2 shutout games over Habersham Central, 10-0, 5-0, and then only giving up 1 run to Tift County in that series. They have looked dominant throughout.
Yeah, man. Etowah has been pretty fantastic. Like we mentioned, it started in the Sweet 16, and in that matchup, Matthew Sharman, a guy we're going to talk about again a little bit later, ended up putting up a 7-inning complete game shutout, no-hitter, 10 Ks on, I believe, 81 pitches in Game 2 against Habersham, which was quite impressive. This is, again, just a sophomore. And with that lineup and with those guys pitching like that, I think they haven't used the bullpen in a game so far in the last 2 rounds, which is impressive. Their starters have went complete in every game, which is a sight to see. Dimitri Angelakos is dealing with a little arm problem right now, and the team and everybody's just stepped up with Sharman and Jackson Rose and Caleb Hughes as well. And that team just looks as good as they can get, as good as it gets right now, as they head into a huge matchup in the Final Four with Blessed Trinity.
Yeah, they've gotten super lucky with that depth of rotation going into these 3-game series.
Scary, man. When you have that kind of depth and then they show up in the playoffs, it's kind of hard to beat.
So now let's talk a little bit about Pope. They get the 3-game series victory over East Paulding, and then they move on. They face Thomas County Central. They get the win there, and they make the Final Four once again.
Yeah, man, nine straight Final Fours is pretty unheard of, I think, in any state, I would imagine. But in Georgia, it's pretty outrageous, especially at the 6A level. To see what this team can do, led by former future gamer John Stetzer, 2025 shortstop, has been huge. They got some big bats at the top of the lineup, and they got some guys on the mound with Dawson Jones and Ethan Garrett who've been huge for them all year long, and they've got hot at the right time. A big sweep against Thomas County Central, and they move on to one of the bigger Final Four matchups I think you're going to find in the state against Houston County. So I think Pope knows how to win. They're one of the best coach teams in the state. Like I was just talking to Hudson about this yesterday. They just know how to win. Chris Turco and that squad just really get the guys ready every night to compete, and they're just showing out, and they know they have the abilities to win every night. When you go to Final Fours 9 straight years, you can win. So that's playing with the best kind of confidence you can play with. So I think Pope's just a team you have to watch out for seemingly every year.
Yeah,
I'm learning.
Let's actually continue talking about the Final Four and just kind of preview a couple of these games, and let's talk about their opponent in Houston County. How great are they? What a great matchup to have here in the Final Four.
Yeah, state championship matchup from last year. Coach Hopkins does a great job with them down there as well. They've been great. Obviously, Drew Burris, Andrew Dunford, Riker Chavis, those guys really carried that team last year. But I think it's just awesome to see, some guys step up. Will Allen Jr., Georgia commit, stepped up on the mound for them. And then they had Isaiah Gallison, freshman, that's been huge for them, playing second base, batting over 300 this year. So they're going to be, eager to, hold that and repeat that state championship. But, with Pope rolling how they are, should be a great matchup coming at you Saturday.
Yeah, and how about these 7A Final Four matchups? You got North Paulding versus Lowndes and Grayson versus Brookwood, more just kind of star-studded matchups.
Yeah, I think Grayson and Brookwood's going to be a fun one. I think Grayson's playing as hot as they can be right now, facing, like we've talked about many times, the best lineup or the best pitching rotation in the state from Brookwood. They're a team that's been getting gritty here in the playoffs, like Hudson mentioned earlier. The Rojaninski twins have been huge. Mason Archie's been big on lineup. JB Beverly at the top of the lineup has been big, getting hot, an uncommitted 2024 outfielder with a ton of speed. And I think they're a team that can win. Like I said, they're going to get the pitching every night. So if they have a guy who's going to give them 5 or 6 innings of 1-run ball, and you can score 2 runs, you're going to win. So it's just going to be huge to see what they can do in a matchup against Grayson, who doesn't have a guy who's going to beat you every night. Like one guy who's going to beat you, I think they have a chance to be a competitive matchup with Brookwood. And on the other side, I talked about it a little bit earlier, but Lowndes and North Paulding about as big as it can get. 2 really balanced lineups. They're going to see good pitching, good bats throughout, and I think it's going to be crazy environments at Lowndes. I was just, like I mentioned, just down there last week, and it was packed out for the Elite Eight matchup. Great student section, about 50 chairs lining the fence as well. So I think it's going to be even bigger when North Paulding comes down. So I think that's a matchup that's going to be a sight to see. And I'm thinking about maybe, I don't know if I can, but maybe making the journey back down for that.
Gotcha. And then over in 5A, Ware County has had quite the run. Obviously, in the first round, great performances over Tucker, but then they go to Game 3 in the next 2 rounds. They end up taking over, or they end up beating a Union Grove team that we were pretty high on coming into the playoffs. Same with GAC. Now they come up against a big powerhouse in Carterville. How do you see that going?
Yeah, Ware County, haven't got a chance to see them this year, but I think that kind of side of the bracket, worked out for them. GAC, losing Conrad Kaysen on the mound was a big blow. So getting to the Elite Eight, Elite Eight there for them was obviously, a successful season, I would say. And then Ware County getting to Carterville will be huge. So, Ware County gets that down there, I believe, right? Or is it at Carterville? It's down there, right? So, yeah, I think that plays into their advantage. Carterville, they're going to have to come out and play good ball. So that should be a good 5A matchup.
Gotcha. Is there any other Final Four matchups that have kind of caught you guys' eyes?
I mean, mention another. I'd love to see that the Kell Greenbrier match or the Kell Loganville matchup is going to be huge. Loganville coming off a state championship last year. Kell making a huge run here. A team like Grayson, we didn't predict to be making a Final Four run. They have some quality senior bats at the top of that lineup that can get hot and carry them. So I think that's going to be a huge matchup. The environment's going to be quite insane at Loganville. So I think seeing Kell performing in an environment like that will be huge. And I think that's going to be a fun one as they go up against possibly the winner of the Ware County Carterville matchup.
Yeah, I like the Stars Mill. I like the 4A Final Four as well. That Stars Mill North Oconee. That's a huge matchup. North Oconee didn't start off having the greatest year, but they've really put some things together. Noah Allen's figured it out on the mound, previous future gamer for us. So that's a really big matchup. That's kind of similar to those Houston and Pope, and North Paulding versus Lowndes. That place is going to be really packed at Stars Mill. I know Stars Mill already has a great home crowd, but I know North Oconee will be traveling as well. And then on the other side, Cherokee Bluff and Holy Innocents should be really good as well. almost went to Holy Innocents yesterday, but ended up going to the Brookwood Buford game. But Holy Innocents has a couple guys that we really like. Taylor Fuller, sophomore, two-way guy for him, has been really big. I got to see him last year in the playoffs, and then Duke commit Zach Jackson is kind of their main guy. Another two-way guy for them. So I think that'll be a fun matchup. Like I said, I've mentioned before, I really like Cherokee Bluff's lineup. Gabe Gowder is coming off of a big start in their last series, which is big for them. He's got going. So that'll be a fun one to see how it shakes out.
Gotcha. All right. Are you guys ready to, or actually, let's talk about, you guys have any games already kind of circled that you want to hit this weekend for the Final Four?
Yeah, Friday night I'm going to make out my first look at Kings Ridge and Tula Falls. And Hudson's been out to see Kings Ridge before, and they're a team that we're high on. They have a bunch of underclass bats that we like a lot going forward. So I think that's going to be a fun matchup. Tula Falls is a guy in Aston Roach who's been huge for them as well, and it's a guy looks intriguing in the 2026 class. And as I just wrote about last week with the 2024 all upper class team, seeing with my eyes and scouting with my eyes is huge. So getting out to see all these kids before we see them this summer would be massive.
Yeah. What about yourself, Hudson?
That'll be a really good matchup. I think I'm going to stay in that classification and go to the other side with Prince Avenue. Haven't got the chance to see them this year. We'll get to see them against Crawford County, led by kind of Andrew Hammett, Kennesaw State commit for them. So that'll be, another fun matchup on the other side of the bracket. Prince Ave, really high-powered offensive team, similar to Kings Ridge. Judson Hartwell, leading them. So we'll definitely get to cover those 1A matchups on Friday. And then Saturday, still up in the air. There's so many good matchups. North Oconee Stars Mills, great. Rockmart, North Cobb Christian is a really good one. So we'll see. We haven't decided on those yet, but tons of good ones to choose from, obviously.
Awesome. Well, Ian, let's go ahead and talk about your all-underclass team. This one, a little bit of a different perspective compared to that all-upper class. A lot of the all-upper class guys, they've got a couple of years of varsity playing experience. Some of these guys on this list, maybe their first year on varsity or at least their first year getting some significant playing time. So it's very interesting to see these guys that are kind of being discovered now that we'll certainly be talking about down the road. And we'll start with the catcher, 2026 catcher from Grayson, Vernon Woodward.
Yeah, I wanted to lead off by not even just all underclass. Like I wanted to give these guys their love. So this is going to be an all sophomore team, and then we'll talk about an all freshman team next week as well. That's going to come out. So I think we're big on these classes. The 26 and 27 classes are the huge classes for the state of Georgia. We believe there's first rounders in those classes. So I don't know if we'll see a first rounder from the state in this class or the next class potentially, but 26, 27 is one that we're thinking sky high potential on. So getting as much love to these classes was huge for us in this year. So yeah, but starting this with Vernon Woodward, a guy I talked about a little bit earlier with Grayson. He's emerged as their top bat for them, batting in the 3-hole. He's catching every day. He's the guy who started the season on JV, made it to varsity real early in the year, ended up batting .435 for them. Was huge throughout the lineup. There's impressive bat to ball from the left side. He never looks outmatched at the plate against quality pitching. It's a guy who's going to hit for power as he grows into it. It's a really physical, I believe he's 5'11", 200-pound frame. It's a guy who's going to get stronger as he develops. And getting this much playing time, as I mentioned, from JV to varsity as a sophomore and then emerging as the best bat on the team is going to be huge for his confidence heading into this summer and going forward as probably the leader for this Grayson team over the next 2 springs and going forward into a Final Four run. This is a guy who's checking off so many boxes as a sophomore. It's kind of hard not to overlook him. And he's a guy who's got future game potential as well as we look forward to finalizing those teams as we get farther along this summer.
Fantastic. Well, let's move to the corner infielders, and we'll start with first baseman, who is actually one of the top catchers as well in this class. Chip Gorski out of Kings Ridge Christian put up great numbers at the preseason showcases and clearly followed it up this season.
Yeah, Chip's been our guy. Like you mentioned, the preseason All-State was probably one of the loudest BP performances we've seen from a sophomore in quite some time. It was extremely physical. He produced multiple triple-digit exit velocities. The end of the day, I think with the highest out of anybody when we had 43 of the top 100 2026 is in attendance that day. So he was coming out. He hits with intent. There's a ton of power. There's juice in the barrel. He hit 6 bombs this year. He hit over 400. I believe he only struck out 9 or 10 times this year. And somebody who's aggressive at the plate, looking to do damage when he gets up there, striking out that little is impressive. He's been their guy at the top of the lineup for them this year. I think he's hit. Let's see how many. I think RBIs was huge for them. I think it's over 40 earlier this year. I just hadn't seen it this morning. Let me go back here. Where are we at here? 41 RBIs for Chip this year for Kings Ridge. So that's getting that plate, and he's producing every night. He finished the year with 16 over his last 8 games, which is huge too. He went on a hot run as his team makes their Final Four run. I think he's a guy who's going to continue to get better. He may be a first baseman. He may be a catcher. We're not sure. There's plus arm strength behind the plate, but the carrying card is going to be the bat. He's going to hit for power, and now he's hitting for average, hitting about 400 as a sophomore. It's impressive to see.
Gotcha. And then we'll go across the diamond to third base, and you've got Hudson Reed, a Georgia commit out of Morgan County, one of the top players at his position in the state. What is there to say about this guy? He's great.
Yeah, man, another preseason All-State standout. So it's a guy from Morgan County, a team that had a really good year as well. If they would have been healthy, it could have been even better. He's a really physical specimen at third base at 6'2", 230. He's big on the mound for them as well. There's a ton of power. He hits for average as well. It's extremely easy power. It's very compact from the right side. Excuse me. He hit 430 this spring with 22 RBIs. He even stole 13 bags as well. So he produces in many ways. Losing a guy like Ty Tillery, who was huge for them on the mound and at the plate this year, was big. So him stepping up and being the main producer for that Morgan County team as a sophomore, like I talk about all sophomores in this team, but it was huge for me. And I think he's a guy going into this summer, as he's already one of the top ranked third basemen in the state. I think his ceiling is even going to be even higher, and he has a chance to produce as one of the top third basemen in the country.
Gotcha. Well, let's move to the middle infield, and it starts with the shortstop, Keon Johnson, out of First Presbyterian Day, number 1 player in Georgia. Obviously, there's so many great things to talk about with him.
Yeah, man, it's just polish with Keon. It's 5 tools. He's going to hit for average. He's going to hit for power. He runs. He throws a great glove at shortstop as well. It's a premier frame at 6'2", 180. He slashed 441, 578, 750 this spring. He hit 5 home runs with 28 RBIs and a 2-to-1 walk to K ratio. It's pretty much all you can ask for as a player. He's about as good as it gets in the state as a top ranked player. He's a top 10 player in the country. The ceiling is pretty unlimited with him. He's going to have every Power 5 suitor he asked for when the recruiting opens this summer. And it's going to be really exciting to see where he ends up, because I think the potential for Keon is as high as it gets.
Gotcha. Well, let's stick with the middle infield and talk about kind of a shortstop / second baseman, plays in both. Johnson DuBose out of GAC.
Yeah, man, Johnson DuBose, a guy we saw GAC a lot towards the end of the spring. He stood out seemingly all spring long for them. He's a guy who emerged as one of the top bats batting in the 2 or the 3 hole from them all spring long. He ended up hitting 441 this spring as well. Another guy hitting 440. These are again underclass bats hitting 440 on varsity in one of the better states in the country for high school baseball is impressive to see. I mean, regardless, whether it's 5A, 2A, 1A. I mean, I really don't care. The bat to ball and having that kind of approach against quality pitching, you're seeing 85 to 90 nightly basis. Region play might dip a little bit. These guys are seeing quality pitching every night. He ended up picking 41 hits on the year. It's another really good frame, similar to Keon Johnson. He's about 6'3", 180, really long. Creates a ton of leverage and extension through the zone at the plate. And these guys are going to continue to get better and more physical. He's not a power guy right now. It's gap to gap, but as he continues to grow, there's already bat speed. And again, the bat to ball is there, so he continues to grow into his power. And whether it's at shortstop or possibly third base or second, he's got potential at all 3 positions. And I think he's a guy who's going to be high for us as we move forward going into developing this 2026 class.
Gotcha. Well, let's make the jump to the outfield, and we'll start with Martin Scheller from Marist, a fantastic player.
Tool shed. I mean, that's the first thing I can really say about Martin. Again, a guy that I hadn't seen before coming into preseason All-State. He was a former junior future gamer for us. I'll let Hudson touch on that a little bit after, but he's about as tooled up as you're going to find. 6'2", 200 pounds, 6'3" runner in the 60. A ton of power at the plate. He produces 107 EVs, I think, this spring. He's hit for a ton of power at the top of that Maris lineup. I think he hit 436 this spring. 436 with 10 extra base hits. He's going to steal bags. He's going to run. He's going to play good. He's going to play good outfield. There's tools to play across the outfield, but I think the highest upside is going to be in a corner, likely right field, where the plus arm strength and his tools and where his back can really shine. I think Shear is going to be a guy who's going to potentially be another future game potential. When you're talking about this team right here, you're going to see definite future gamers on this team. I mean, there's no other way to talk about it. There's going to be a future gamers who's going to produce, but he's the type of guy who's got the ceiling. There's already guys that already like him in the Power 5 range that if you're seeing video, you've seen all these guys are going to talk about him. There's guys out there that you're looking at, and Shear's the type of tools and the type of production you're looking for as a sophomore. And as he heads into his biggest summer, he's going to start at top prospect games here in a few weeks with us. It's going to be impressive to see.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I wish I could throw a side by side up of Shear at junior future games. I sent it to Ian a couple of days ago, but I think just the work he's put in over the years has been really impressive. I didn't hear a whole lot from him. After that 13U year, he didn't play on a team that played at Lakepoint a ton, so we didn't see him all that often. And then he pops up and he's just massive. Like Ian mentioned, tool shed. Like he's built. It's a D1 frame, D1 strength. So like it's really impressive. I was at the BT North game. One of the assistants from Maris was there. Watching the game a little bit. He was just like, he's super mature in the locker room too. He's calling guys out on stuff. He's keeping everybody on task. So I'm sure he was a big part, in that big playoff run that they had, and should be back for a little revenge next year. So really excited to see him at top prospect games. We'll get to see him up against all the top outfielders in the state. And he's definitely a riser for us that we'll continue to follow throughout the summer.
All right, well, let's move to the next spot in the outfield, and we'll give that one to Gino Gorowski out of Denmark High School.
Yeah, man, this is our guy. I think Gino's been to almost every event that we've invited him to over the last year or so. And coming into the spring, he came in with a chip on his shoulder. He was looked at to be the guy for Denmark as they looked to make a rise as they were in a rebuilding year per se. A lot of young bats in that team. And Gino had a lot of lofty expectations for himself, and I think he exceeded almost all of them. It's about as good as it was good of a season as a sophomore center fielder as you could have. He ended up slashing 488, 622, and 707, and slugged 707 with 12 doubles, 3 triples, and stole 12 bags. He walked 20 times. He only struck out 9 times. He's one of the biggest grinders we've ever met. He wants to work. He wants to put the work in. He wants to be the best player on the field at all times. He's a guy who's going to grind out at bats. He's not going to chase. He's going to show a good approach at the plate. He's going to go out there and steal bags. He's going to show good instincts on the base pads, and just continues to produce. Like he plays in the Georgia Jackets this summer, and it's a guy we're going to see a bunch at Lakepoint. And I think the upside with Gino is about not as high as it gets in center field because of the tools that he produces right now, but he's just going to produce. It's 5 tools that are going to produce throughout the leagues. It's going to be a 50 hit, 50 run, 50 glove. It's going to be 50 tools throughout the profile for Gorowski. And I think there's a guy who's going to hit 500 potentially next year as a junior. That was something he wanted to do this year, and hitting 488 is about as close as it gets. So I think that's a guy who's going to potentially be a 500 hitter at the high school level, which is about pretty insane. I think I would imagine myself. I didn't hit 500 as a high school hitter. So Gino's a guy that we love a lot. He's probably going to be one of our. We'll not talk about that actually, but I'll let Hudson touch on Gino a little bit more. But I think he's a guy he was my first name that I wrote down when making this list because it was as easy as pick as it could be.
Yeah, Gino, it was top prospect games last year, really, when we first saw him. We saw him in a Denmark lineup with Kyle Henley and the other North Carolina commit. In that lineup, we saw him kind of step up as a freshman. And then he came to top prospect games, and it was just like, barrel after barrel, line drive, nothing. He wasn't hitting balls out of the yard, but it was like 94, 95 consistent EVs, and it was like, man, this kid can really hit, I think. And followed him through the summer, saw him a little bit Wasn't on a team that played a ton at Lakepoint, so we didn't get a ton of looks. But then he comes out this spring and just carries those that mentality of being the best guy on the field into the spring and really produced. Obviously, he's wanting to get those home run numbers up, but it's like if he's barreling balls gap to gap and hitting 488, then all good in my books. The home runs will come. He's a great hitter. He's got a great eye for the ball. The approach is really, really good. I think that's a big piece for these sophomores when we talk about producing is having an approach at the plate. A lot of them are super, super talented, but some of the stuff you can't teach is what takes some of these kids to the next level. So his approach at the plate is really good. He's going to take his walks. He's not going to strike out a lot. So we're pumped to have him. At Lakepoint this summer a lot with the Georgia Jackets. We'll get to see him in May at a little scout day deal we do with them. So great spring for Gino and should carry into the summer for a big recruiting year for him.
All right, well, let's wrap up the outfield with 2026 Miami commit Trevor Condon out of Etowah High School. Just a great combinations of skills as a player on the field.
Yeah, twitch. It's one the word you think about when you watch Condon. It's about as tooled up as you're going to find in a small frame, about 5'11", 175. He hits for power, he hits for average. He hit 407 this spring with over 30 hits as well. And gets on base a ton, 31 RBIs. 1-to-1 walk to strikeout ratio as well. Then use the whole field. He's not going to chase a bunch. He's gonna get on base seemingly every time he gets up there, whether it's a hit, an error. He's going to beat a ball out, run to first. He's a plus runner as well as a 6'4" runner. He's a guy who's going to be a center fielder at the next level. He hasn't played a ton of center field on this senior-led outfield for them, but I think he's going to be a guy who has the tools to play center field at a high level going forward, whether that's next year or going forward after that. Condon's been as good as it gets for me. Every time I've seen him, it's been barrel after barrel after barrel, whether it's triples down the line, spraying it up the middle, going the opposite way. It's been as good as it gets with Condon. And I think the ceiling is extremely high as for the Miami commit. I just don't know how many holes you can find in this game, and that's hard to say as a high school player. Like you're not looking for holes when you're watching guys, but holes appear when you see them. And like with Condon, as much twitch as there is there and as many moving parts as he has to the plate, there's not too many holes to see there in the batted ball profile, at least. Defensively, like as I mentioned, center fielder to the next level. So the ceiling is really high for Condon, and the production is matching it right now. Yeah,
I definitely, this is probably a guy that I know the most about on this list, coming from Etowah. His older sister played softball at Etowah. She ended up going to South Carolina, transferred to Georgia Tech. So he's got a sister playing at a high level. I've been seeing Trevor, doing crazy workouts since he was in like middle school. So this kid is all about prepreration. I saw him play freshman football. I've seen him play baseball, of course. Yeah, great running back. So
he's an athlete. It's
definitely. So it definitely aids to how good he is around the field.
For sure. Talk about the approach from him too. Ian didn't get to see him as a freshman last year, but I think he put such high expectations on himself as a freshman in that Etowah lineup. He got a little big at times to where he just wanted to perform so much. And that approach from freshman to sophomore year was huge for him, which it resulted in his talent on full display. So that was the best thing to see, I think, from Condon, from my point, this spring.
Gotcha. Well, let's go over to a two-way player. 2026 Auburn commit, outfield left-handed pitcher, Matthew Carrion from Lowndes.
Yeah, man, Kerrigan's a guy we're really high on as well. Getting down there to see him for my first time. I know Hudson's seen him before, but this was my first time this past week getting down to see him, and it was impressive. Left-handed pitcher, outfielder as well. On the mound, he went 5 innings, 1 run, struck out 5, 1 walk, in a 5-inning run rule. 11-1 win to clinch the Final Four appearance for the 3rd time in the last 4 years. He fills it up with the low 80s. The curveball is 68, 71. He mixes in a high 70s changeup as well, but the pitchability and filling up the zone is what leads it for him on the mound. And at the plate, I think it's a bat-to-ball profile that's going to continue to get better. There's impressive barrel accuracy at the plate. He can expand the zone and find impact throughout, whether it's elevated or below the zone. There's bat speed there as well. He's looking for his pitch at the plate. He's aggressive from out fastballs. He can hit spin as well. There's a lot to like when you're watching him at the plate. There's going to be budding power as he continues to develop. And I think a 6'2", 180 frame is really lean, broad shoulders. He's going to get more physical. They're working extremely hard down there. Allowance. They're some of the most physical team I think I've ever seen as a high school group. Every guy had quads that were twice the size of mine, which is not saying the most, but it was an extremely physical team. And as this kid develops as just a sophomore, it's going to be exciting to see what his power develops into with the bat to ball profile already what it is.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk about your utility player, 2026 out of Cass, Chase Tatum. He's a top first baseman in the class. He plays some great outfield. On the football field, he's great too. He's got D1 offers as a wide receiver / tight end. So many things to say about him.
This is a grown man. I mean, he does everything. He did everything for this Cass team this spring. He played center field for this team. This is a huge 6'2", 230-pound frame. This is like I mentioned, this is an XL frame playing center field. He moved extremely well for his size. Hit 375 and showed power at the plate. He was their number one on the mound as well. I think he had a sub 2 ERA as well. He made the most starts for this team. He did a little bit of everything as Cass made a pretty deep run to I think the Sweet 16 before they got beat by Carterville. This team knows how to win. This team knows how to win. Chase has a chance to be a quality baseball player. As you mentioned, the football offers, he's getting offers from D1 schools. It seems like every day now. You look on Twitter and it's a new Chase Tatum offer. But I think there's some high upside on the diamond as well. Whether it's at the plate where I think he's going to hit for a ton of power. He's not going to be a center fielder, obviously, but the way he moves, he can play in right field. He's like you mentioned, he's a top first baseman in the class. And I think he's going to continue to get better. The bat to ball is good. Hudson's mentioned approach with these guys, and I think he's shown a stronger approach. He walked more and he struck out this year, and on a lineup where they were going to pitch to you. So he was seeing the best stuff from the best guys at the top of that lineup, and he continued to produce night in and night out. And I think his ceiling is going to get really high as we move on, as he develops as a baseball player.
Gotcha. Well, let's get into the pitching staff. Our first starting pitcher, 2026 UGA commit Matthew Sharman from Etowah. Obviously, it seems like we talk about him every single week, and you can't avoid him. He is just a killer, and honestly could have made it as a two-way player. He was first-team All-Region as a pitcher, second-team All-Region as a hitter. He quickly became a staple in this Etowah rotation.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I talk about Matthew Sharman, I couldn't leave him off this list. You walk one guy in 37 innings and strike out for 53 with a sub-1 ERA in one of the better lineups or better rotations in the state. You're standing out. The operation is as good as it gets as a sophomore pitcher. He gets a great extension down the mound. It's 3 pitches. It's almost a plus changeup right now as a 16-year-old. Fastball's up to 92. He's going to throw harder. He's going to get more physical. This is a mid-90s arm that's going to throw possibly even harder than that. Breaking ball is continuing to get better this spring. He's had 2 big playoff performances back-to-back now. As I just mentioned, his regular season stats. He was through a 10K no-hitter last week and then a 12K performance against Tiff a few nights ago as well, with just 1 walk in a shutout win. He's about as polished as he gets as a underclass pitcher in the state, with the ceiling about as high as it gets as well. He's going to be our number 2 ranked player in the state. I'd rather just say that now. He's the guy. It's Keon and Matthew for me. So I think it was pretty easy pick for me to put him at this top of this list for the starting pitcher on the all-sophomore team.
Gotcha. And then our next starting pitcher, right-handed pitcher Reese Grodman out of Model, a top player in the state, a top 100 player in the country.
Yeah, Reese Grodman, man, another guy who could have been a two-way player on this team. He was huge for Model on both ways this year. He struck out 81 with a sub 2 ERA as well. The changeup is developing into one of the better changeups in the class. He's been up to 89 this spring, and he's just now developing his lower half. As a guy who's never really used his lower half, he's been extremely upper body dominant. So as he continues to develop on the mound and get better, he's going to throw harder. This is another guy who's going to be a mid-90s arm. And he's just really just tipping the scales of what he can be this spring and striking out 81 guys, being the guy for Model as they made another big run into the playoffs was huge. He gains some big experience. He's going to continue to play third base for this team at a high level. And I think he's a guy. As you look at a bunch of guys in this 26 class, I think Grodman is a guy who has a chance to be a future game arm for us as well. He's a guy who's continued to develop and get better. We wanted to see a lot from the spring, and he outshined our expectations, I would say.
Gotcha. And then our final guy on the list, right-handed pitcher Blake Bryant out of Citizens Christian Academy. In the national rankings, he is one spot ahead of Reese Grodman. They're both fantastic players, both top 100 guys, and a giant on the mound, 6'5".
Yeah, Blake was a guy I was able to see last fall when I was able to come down. I made a bunch of trips last fall. I get down from tournaments and seeing some stuff towards the end of the year. And Blake was a guy who stood out for me playing for Prime Baseball, up to 91 on the mound. Came into the spring. We weren't able to see him this spring playing for Citizens Academy, Citizen Christian Academy, excuse me. But the numbers were undeniable. He struck out 97 batters in 56 innings this spring, sub-2 or ERA. Just got guys out at a high level. The fastball is his bread and butter, up like I mentioned, up to 91. It's going to be hard. He's going to throw harder. He's going to live in the low 90s this summer as well. Throws a really good breaking ball and a budding changeup. It's a guy who continues to produce. We're not sure what the ceiling is. He's already a top 10 arm in our 2026 class. The ceiling is much higher than that. So seeing the huge numbers as a sophomore, but striking out nearly 100 batters is quite impressive to see.
Definitely. Well, that rounds out the list. Anything you kind of want to talk about to summarize it?
I mean, we obviously left guys out. You can't put every sophomore who had a huge year on this list. So I think that's something I want to point out. I'm not out here to slight guys on these all sophomore, all upper class lists. That's something I like to mention. I don't like to talk bad about guys, so it hurts me not to put 75 players on an all sophomore team. So that was all I always wanted to say about that. The all freshman team will be out next week as well, but this will be in print to read tomorrow as well as everything we've talked about today.
Fantastic. We'll check that out on Prep Baseball Georgia's website. We'll have it linked in the description here on YouTube. And with that being said, I guess we'll look ahead into this weekend. At Lakepoint, we've got May Slugfest, 31 teams and 14U, almost an entirely different field of teams from last weekend. So last week we had 33 teams, a ton of teams switch over, and now we've got 31 here, so lots of baseball to watch at Lakepoint this weekend, lots of top talent. Saw some great players out on the field last weekend. We're going to see a bunch of them out again this weekend. And then, of course, Final Four matchups this weekend all around the state.
Yeah, just touching on the U tournaments at Lakepoint. Get out there and watch that. I'm not saying it's going to happen every weekend, but last weekend we had the top 2028 player possibly in the country pitching for the Brave Scout team. 2028 pitcher Dexter McLeon, up to 92 at 14 years old. Again, it's not something you're going to see every night, but just get out and see the talent that's producing in this state. So Lakepoint is putting on impressive youth tournaments every weekend, and the talent is showing up. It's going to be a lot of the guys you're going to be hearing talked about on this podcast over the next few years. So it's good to see this talent now.
Definitely. That Brave Scout team has been very impressive to watch. Tons of great names on that one. All right. Anything else on the prep baseball side before we get out of here?
No, top prospect games still rolling with it. Middle infielders and catchers are pretty much full for the underclass. Arms is still pretty wide open. Few more outfielder spots, and then a couple corner infield spots as well. So getting really excited for that event. I think we're up around 180 kids. So biggest event to date. I said it for preseason all state, but now I think the top prospect games is going to be our most talented team to date, or talented showcase to date. So a lot of those same guys are out there, bringing that preseason straight to the spring, straight into the summer. So, with these all sophomore and all freshman teams, that Ian has been putting together, top prospect games is kind of the big event for these guys. That's really where we start to separate some guys, see everybody in one spot. So we're really excited for that event. Upper class, we're approaching that kind of 100 player mark. Really arm dominant for them. Got a lot of good arms coming, and then position players is still open right now. So that's always a great event as well. 15, 20 coaches typically there. So always have a lot of guys sign from that event in that 25 class, since their recruiting is kind of wide open right now. A lot of them, just look to take care of business in the spring, and then they come into the summer ready to shine, ready to get that commitment out of the way so they can focus on their senior year of high school. So, top prospect games there. We still got our open events throughout the state that we're running in Dublin and down at Georgia Southern. So, check those out if you're in the area. If you need to get some numbers updated, get that video on the profile. Super beneficial for these college coaches to go on there when they're at tournaments and see previous stats and previous data on you. really good episode here. Pumped for the Final Four this weekend. We'll be there for sure. And then obviously we'll be doubling up most likely when it comes to these state championships here in a couple weeks at the Striper Stadium, at the Emperor Stadium, I guess. That's what they're called now.
Yeah.
So,
And I think the
really
low divisions, I think down at Georgia Southern.
Yep, they're down in Georgia State. I think like 2 through 4 maybe is Rome, and then 5 through 7 is Gwinnett.
It's all over the place.
Great spots for us to film at. We usually can get up close, so we'll have some good stuff coming out from those. So pumped to have those here in the next couple weeks, and then we'll roll straight into the summer. So nonstop from there. Excited to get going. Had to pace Ian a little bit this spring, even though he was all over the place for this crazy summer we got coming up. But I know he's
at all. 100, I think I tallied it up 116 games this spring.
Wow.
I mean, there was a lot of double headers, so like I guess we can like simmer it down a little bit, but I mean we had to, like this was my first spring in the state, like being at the field is what I want to do. So I wanted to get out there and see as many guys as possible, build relationships, build connections with these guys, these coaches. I want these kids to know that I'm here, that we're here for these classes, and for the state. So Hudson does a great job here. I wanted to come in here and do as much as I could for be on the road as much as possible, just be present. And I think we did a great job this spring with high school coverage. I think it's just been an awesome spring.
Fantastic. Well, guys, thank you guys for watching. If you want to show some support, make sure you subscribe here on the Lakepoint YouTube channel. Turn on notifications, stay up to date with all the episodes coming out and everything else we're doing. Got a lot of stuff coming up this summer for Lakepoint as well. Follow these guys, Hudson and Ian, on Twitter. Follow Prep Baseball Georgia on all their accounts as well. Make sure you're checking out the Prep Baseball website. Always putting up articles, scout blogs, things like that. Tons of stuff heading into the summer. And yeah, I think that's going to do it for us, guys. Thank you guys for joining me today, and thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you next week with some Final Four action and some state championship previews. Thanks.